I had just returned from Brazil, where I'd been producing a picture, Dino Laurentiis picture, and it was tired and it was a hard picture, and Bud called over the weekend, and my kids were there on a weekend jaunt to stay with me in London from school, and he asked me if I would produce this picture, pop picture, with a group for very, very cheap, a very limited budget, and do it very quickly. I know you're the only man that can do it. I said, what is it, Bud? He said, the Beatles. I said, I will not do it, not because it's the Beatles, but I don't want to do a pop picture. I just don't want to do one at this stage. Put the phone down, don't worry about it, Dennis. I'll see you in a couple of days for a glass of whiskey or something. My kids said, Dad, you must be mad. You have to do the Beatles picture. You have to. We want to meet them. So they obviously knew them. I didn't. So I called Bud back. He said, 4 weeks. I'll give you 4 weeks. So he said, great, it's a deal. And the first time I met them was on the train, because I had to explain to them that, we shot things out of sequence, and, they had to be there on time, and they had to, comply with this and do it. And it was great. It was great. There wasn't a murmur of dissent. They just wanted to do it, and they were enjoying being together on a train with a lot of people. In fact, I think one of them turned out and married one, didn't he? George.
I'm sorry, miss. You mustn't fraternise with meat prisoners.
Prisoners?
Convict in transit. Typical old lads, the lot of them.
You are?
Get out, ladies! Get out while you can!
And that was the start of it. And that was the start of it. And it was great. It was really great. The first conversation was, where do you plan to shoot the picture? Walter and Dick said, we're shooting it in Liverpool. I said, well, you cannot do it on this sort of money that Bud has just told me. I mean, I think he offered me £150,000 budget to do the picture. Bear in mind also that the script, from the first draft script, which was a lovely script written by Alan Owen, was written as a film, which it was going to be. But he was always trained and understood that, you went to location, to cut, to over shoulders, to this, to that. All of that eventually was taken out of the script, and everything was done in limited form, and it worked remarkably well. And it was Richard's way of shooting, and we all helped with our choice of locations and sets by the virtue of inhibiting the interiors and making them confined and small, and letting everything outside go wild, big and free. It worked tremendously well, but it was great. It was just great. But what was extraordinary? There was never any embarrassment with any actor playing against the Beatles, and there was never any embarrassment against Beatles playing against major actors.
When I say stay put, I mean stay put.
Don't cane me, sir. I was led astray.
Oh, shut up, John. They're waiting for you in the studio.
They're perfectionists. They have a natural ability. Bearing in mind, it's the first time they've been in front of a camera, on a film set. And they carried a whole film, a feature film that was going to be shown around the world to millions of people. I thought it was amazing, really. In those days, you see, television was in its early stages, and they never had television studios like we have now, great enormous monolith buildings. They used to use old, dark theatres, the old sort of music halls for theatres. And I had been to this theatre years earlier and took my kids to see Peter Pan, because I think that's the only thing they ever played there every Christmas. And I thought that would be wonderful. And I said to Richard, and I think he knew, I can't remember whether he knew the theatre or not, but I went down and saw them and arranged to take over the entire theatre for 6 days, I think it was. And we could use any part of it. So, because I used it for, several of the sets. It saved a fortune in building sets. So we used it there, and it worked fantastically well. Now, the interesting thing was that the art department at that time, and we had we had a very tight budget. The art department came to my office and said they got the all the equipment. It was being very, very expensive and very costly. Cameras, television tubes, monitors, a lot of money. And in those days they had a limited life, you know, when you used them, those things. And when he told me the price of it, I nearly threw a fit. I said, let me think about it. I'm sitting in the office. Walter Shenton was in the office, and he was the producer of the picture, as you know. I was the associate producer. I said, Walter, you have to forgive me. I asked to speak to Sir Joseph Lockwood, who was head of EMI. Oh, he's at a meeting, can't be disturbed. I said, well, you tell him it's terribly important, and I'm producing a Beatles picture, and I wanted to speak to him. It came on the phone. I said, my art director has just been to Bush to order all this equipment. He's working out some sort of publicity arrangement. It suddenly struck me, Sir Joseph, that this might not be good for your company doing their records. Please don't do that. I will send you all the camera equipment, including transport, Sir Joseph. Yes. And they sent a lot. Free. Nothing. And we overwhelmed that stage with equipment, as you could see in the film. We managed to put together a crew of top flight people for bottom flight money. And they were, I mean, for example, the cameraman had done Doctor Strange, done major movies and the whole thing. But he had worked with Richard before, so we started with him. He came with marvellous operators and people like that. I came with marvellous editors and people like that, and we put together, and it was, I suppose it must have been more luck than judgment, one of the best crews that I had ever worked with on one of the lowest budget pictures that I'd ever worked with. And it was one of those remarkable things. And everybody on the crew, there was, I can't remember one dissent, one bad day, one argument. They were absolutely terrific. And the frenzy with which the picture was made, you know, would normally start that sort of neurosis, you know, by these people. Not one bit of it. And they all loved it. And it was an extraordinary thing. It was an excellent crew. By the time we'd started shooting, there was a sort of buzz around that this group was great, you know, and they were going to be around a long time. Although I have to say, the financiers didn't think so. In fact, the instruction to me was, please get it over quick, because these guys are not going to last. But, you know, when you think the picture was 37 years ago, whatever it was, in 1964, it's an amazing statement. But no, up to that point, every damn pop picture that had been made was pretty awful when you think about it. All of them were staged musicals. You know, the girl had to get the boy had to get the girl, and they were staged musicals. There was nothing in this that was a stage musical. It was the first picture shot in the manner of the early French movies, cinéma verité, with allowing people to wander in and out, accomplished actors, to wander in and out and do their thing. And it opened up a whole refreshing area of music and picture, which was a musical, basically. But I mean, nobody ever regarded it as a musical, but it was a musical, really. And I think that took the critics' eye. They suddenly realized that there were four talented young men with the most beautiful music in the world, and they were acquitting themselves really well on the screen, you know, really well. So, and by the way, they were pretty good-looking guys too in those days. Well, it actually changed my life in films and opened my eye. Apart from the fact that I worked with the Beatles, you know, for a long time after, it opened my eyes to the possibility of making any sort of film, which I loved. So it did change my life in that respect. And Richard and I went on, as we say, became partners and made 9 films together, you know, which is a pretty track record. I don't know another producer that ever found a director he could work with for 9 pictures. Normally they shoot each other after 2, you know.